The school hallways were buzzing with noise, but for Maya, every step was a challenge. She was a bright and gentle girl who happened to be blind, and she had just transferred to a new school, hoping for a fresh start. But not everyone welcomed her with kindness. A group of bullies saw her cane and dark glasses as an easy target. They laughed, whispered, and pushed her books to the floor, thinking she couldn't defend herself. What they didn't know was that Maya's father, Marcus, was no ordinary parent. He was a Navy SEAL, a man trained to handle the toughest situations with calm and precision. As Maya struggled to keep her balance in this new environment, the bullies grew bolder, mocking her in ways that cut deep. They thought she was helpless, someone who wouldn't fight back. But behind her quiet strength was a father who had spent years preparing her to face the world with courage. Marcus had always told her that blindness didn't make her weak, made her stronger. What the bullies failed to realize was that the very man they were about to cross had fought battles far greater than anything they could imagine. And soon, their cruelty would bring consequences they never saw coming. Maya had always been strong-willed, even before her blindness. Her father had raised her to see the world with her heart, to hear details others overlooked, and to trust her instincts. While the other kids at school thought she was vulnerable, she carried a quiet confidence within her. Still, it wasn't easy. Every day felt like a test, finding her way through crowded halls, listening closely to conversations that weren't meant for her, and ignoring the cruel laughter that followed when she passed by. Marcus, her father, had noticed the change in her tone when she spoke about school. He could sense when something wasn't right. His years as a Navy SEAL had trained him to read people better than they read themselves. He knew she wasn't telling him everything, but he didn't press. Instead, he reminded her of the lessons he had taught her since she was little: awareness, patience, and the power of standing tall, even when others tried to push you down. The bullies, however, weren't satisfied with just mocking her. Their whispers grew louder, their actions bolder. They had no idea who was watching, and no idea how quickly their games could turn serious. The question wasn't if Marcus would step in, but when and how far things would go before he did. The days at school grew heavier for Maya. The bullies had started to form a pattern, waiting for her near the lockers, sometimes tripping her in the cafeteria, other times whispering insults when teachers weren't around. What made it worse was the silence of others. Many students noticed, but few spoke up, afraid of becoming targets themselves. Maya felt the sting of loneliness more than the words, yet she refused to let it break her spirit. She carried herself with quiet dignity, remembering her father's voice, reminding her that courage was not about fighting back, but about never giving in. Meanwhile, Marcus kept his watchful eye on his daughter. He would drop her at school, studying the faces around her, noting every detail. Years of Navy SEAL missions had sharpened his instincts, and something about the way a group of kids looked at her told him trouble was brewing. He tried not to step in too soon, knowing Maya needed space to grow stronger, but every fiber of his being was on alert. At school, a new teacher had also started to notice Maya's struggles. She admired the girl's determination, but even she wasn't sure how deep the cruelty ran. Unseen alliances were forming, and tensions were rising. The stage was being set for a confrontation that no one expected. One afternoon, the tension finally reached a breaking point. Maya had just finished class and was making her way through the hall, tapping her cane with steady focus. The bullies were waiting. This time they didn't just whisper or shove her books, they blocked her path entirely. A hush fell over the hallway as curious eyes turned to watch, students sensing something was about to happen. Maya stood still, her grip tightening around her cane, her ears picking up every breath, every snicker. She knew what was coming, but she also knew she couldn't show fear. From outside, Marcus sat in his car, watching through the windshield. He had been uneasy all morning, something in his gut telling him this day would be different. His instincts were rarely wrong, and as he scanned the school doors, he could almost feel the rising tension inside. He leaned forward, his pulse steady but sharp, prepared for whatever might unfold. Inside, the teacher who had been keeping an eye on Maya stepped into the hall, sensing the confrontation, but even she hesitated, unsure how far the bullies would go or how Maya would handle it. The moment hung heavy, the air thick with silence and unspoken fear. Everyone was waiting for the first move, one that would decide everything that came next. Just as the hallway grew tense, one of the bullies reached out, not just to block Maya, but to snatch her cane from her hand. The crowd gasped, some covering their mouths in shock, others frozen with anticipation. Without her cane, Maya seemed vulnerable, but what no one realized was that her father had prepared her for this exact kind of moment. Maya straightened her shoulders, listening carefully, her head turning toward the sound of footsteps and laughter. She wasn't as defenseless as they thought. At that exact moment, Marcus stepped out of his car. Something told him he couldn't wait any longer. As he walked toward the school doors, another twist began to unfold. The principal had been alerted to trouble involving Maya, but the message had been twisted. Word spread that she was the cause of the disruption, not the victim. Now authority was moving against her, not for her. The unfairness of the situation made the stakes even higher. The teacher watching from the hall realized what was happening. Torn between stepping in or staying silent, The bullies smirked, believing the crowd and even the adults might side with them. Maya's breath slowed, her ears tuned in, every sense alert. She was about to prove she was far stronger than they ever imagined. And just outside, Marcus was only steps away from walking into the storm. The hallway felt like it was holding its breath. Maya stood tall, her cane gone, yet she didn't panic. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, listening to every shuffle and laugh. When the bully moved closer, she stepped aside with perfect timing, letting him stumble past her. The crowd gasped. How could a blind girl react so fast? She had learned from her father never to rely on sight, but on awareness. Just then, Marcus entered the hall. His presence alone shifted the energy. Students stepped back, whispering, sensing something powerful in the way he carried himself. Without raising his voice, Marcus demanded the cane back. The bullies froze, realizing too late that this wasn't just an ordinary father. With a calm yet firm tone, he reminded them that strength was never about hurting others, but about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Under his stare, the bully returned the cane, his arrogance gone. The principal arrived, ready to discipline Maya, but the teacher quickly stepped forward, exposing the truth. The crowd backed her up, their silence breaking as they admitted what they had seen. And just when it seemed over, the twist came. The ringleader wasn't finished. He muttered a threat under his breath, unaware Marcus heard every word. Marcus's eyes narrowed. The battle in the hallway was done, but this story was far from over. The ringleader's last words hung in the air, but Marcus didn't respond with anger. Instead, he stepped closer, lowering his voice so only the boy could hear. He spoke not as a Navy SEAL, but as a father, a man who had seen the cost of cruelty in the world. His words carried weight, reminding the bully that choices made in cruelty could shape a lifetime. The boy looked down, his defiance faltering, the reality of his actions finally sinking in. Maya, standing beside her father, held her cane once more. She didn't need to see to know the moment had shifted. For the first time, she felt the weight of the school wasn't against her anymore. Students who had once stayed silent now stepped forward, offering support, ashamed of their silence. The teacher placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, promising that she would never face this battle alone again. The principal, realizing the truth, apologized to Maya and Marcus. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The bullies were held accountable, and the message was clear: the school would no longer tolerate such cruelty. As Marcus walked his daughter out of the building, Maya smiled faintly. She had stood her ground. The bullies had learned a lesson they would never forget, and everyone watching had witnessed the power of quiet courage. In the end, it wasn't sight that made Maya strong, it was vision.